We're good to go then. If you have music to fire, I take it, but if you don't worry about it. Cool. I'll do that again, sorry.
Dalton.
Woo! Now then, Bits and Bobs is coming at you. Joe here, Ronan here, hello.
Hi, Joe.
To say I've antibioticed up. I'm feeling a lot better than yesterday. Double vision is gone, the sweats are gone.
I can feel the energy levels from here. Yeah.
We have dragged in Conan is off today. Aidan O'Hara is the deputy head of sport. Woof. Woof.
We're in the big time now, Joe.
Oh, listen, suddenly sitting up a bit straighter.
Yes, absolutely, Joe. Yeah, nice to be here.
Very nice to have you. There's a quick email in as we go through a few bits and bobs, and it's from Graham, eagle-eyed. After the public ordeal that was the naming of Not the Monday panel, I'm now seeing Bits and Bobs seems to have quietly snuck into my feed with zero public consultation. What gives? Did you lose faith in us? Well, I don't think anyone needed another naming fiasco so early on in our tenure.
No, I was kind of the author of Monday Morning Cornerback, which got a bit of mileage for a few days, so but it was eventually quietly shelved.
But like with great distinction.
Well,
there was in the room there was a general, if this was a GAA podcast, that was nailed on.
Yeah, for what it's worth, that would have been my vote, but it predated me somewhat, so I'm washing my hands of your naming process. It was a fiasco that became a saga. So let's leave it at that.
We've a lot to get through, so what Bits and Bobs is, we don't really know, but it's there's no guest as such, and I guess it's just the Irish Independent Sports Department at large, us in the main, going through what's happening in the world. So, yes, we come to the football stuff in a moment, but it's worth mentioning in the world of athletics at the weekend in Chicago, the women's marathon record was obliterated. Ruth Chepngetich took 2 minutes off it. So the new world record for women, 2 hours, 9 minutes, 56 seconds. She started fast. She ran the first 5K in 15 minutes. Not to do the basic maths for you, but that's 3 minutes a kilometre. And then 10K in 30 minutes and 14 seconds. So barely led up. And by halfway had ditched everybody and then just powered home and effectively blitzed through the final 2K. So she's 30 years of age, Kenyan. Like, she does have a pedigree. She hasn't come from nowhere by any means. She said afterwards, the world record has come back to Kenya, had been an Ethiopian holder previously, and she dedicated it to Kelvin Kiptum. He, of course, had set the men's record in Chicago last year, same race, and then 4 months later he died in a car crash at the age of 24. There was a minute's silence for him at the starting line. Like, as ever with these achievements, they are difficult to compute and put into context. A line which jumped out, I know, Aidan, you saw it as well, we were chatting beforehand. So her marathon, I know a lot of people do the park runs. It's the equivalent of running 9 park runs, and every single one of them was in 15 minutes and 24 seconds, which is, again, kind of hard to fathom, really. Only 10 men beat her, by the way, on the day. And, you know, it's this strange place now where this sport finds itself, whereby straight afterwards there are question marks. So the Let'sRun.com journalist Robert Johnson was there, and he said to her, look, there have been multiple cases of doping in Kenya in recent years. Some people might think you're doping too. What would you say to them? And she said, you know, people must talk, but people must talk, so I don't know. Now, this has not gone down well even in the Kenyan House of Parliament. Gladys Boss, who's the TD for Nairobi Northwest. Honourable Speaker, I urge the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Athletics Kenya and Kenyan Anti-Doping Agency to stand up for athletes, demand an immediate and unequivocal apology from Robert Johnson, he's the journalist, and others who have shamed our athletes. Athletics Kenya, they came out in her defence as well. She went through all the usual anti-doping tests before and after the race, just like every other top athlete, and they attacked the global media at large. Like, it's tricky in some respects because she does have pedigree. She's not a come-from-nowhere type athlete here. She's wearing the Nike Alpha Fly 3. Nutrition has obviously improved so much of late. And we are in a period now where world records were not broken for a long time. Like, there was a 10-year period where the men's marathon record just wasn't broken. But if you look at the women's record. It's been broken 4 times in the last 5 years. 3 of the last 4, interestingly, are in Chicago. For whatever reason, the Chicago Marathon seems to be where to go. So it's been broken a lot at the moment. And that's all, I suppose, in her defence. That said, she has knocked 4 minutes and 22 seconds off her best, which was a victory in the same race in Chicago. She's Chicago Marathon winner 3 times. So she's knocked 4 minutes, 22 seconds off her time from just 2 years ago. And that's not nothing. Like even world records, world athletics have a mechanism, which is interesting, whereby they can benchmark performances across men and women, across genders. So in male terms, her run is a minute quicker than the male marathon record. So like it's a really phenomenal time. You can't emphasize that enough. But like there are other problems. So the time is phenomenal. Her agent, for instance, is the Italian sports agent Federico Rossa. He's managed quite a few Kenyan athletes. Several of them have been disgraced. The former Kenyan Olympic athlete Rita Jeptu, for one, charged with doping offences. So her agency has links with Kenyan athletes who've tested positive. But of course, Kenyan athletes at large have tested positive far too often. As people, I'm sure, are generally aware, in Kenya you can buy EPO at street-side pharmacies without a prescription. There's a Wild West aspect to things over there. They have tried, because things have reached such a nadir over the last decade, they have made an effort to increase their anti-doping powers. $25 million invested over the last 5 years. So like this year, there was an amazingly dramatic week in June. It was unprecedented, where in the same week, 26 runners were banned. The 10K world record holder got a 6-year ban. Last year's Amsterdam Marathon winner, testosterone, steroids, received a ban. But like it's a fairly ugly scene. 100 Kenyan athletes have been banned for doping since 2017. So what's that, 100 divided by 7? We're into double figures, basically, banned for doping since 2017. And obviously the percentage of those who dope and those who are caught is not a great ratio. So that's the background to this stunning performance at the Chicago Marathon, where Kenyan Parliament is outraged. And by the way, I say this without agenda. This isn't me having spoken to people in the know and I'm kind of hinting at something I know. That isn't what this is. I'm just looking at all the news coverage and the general reaction. I have no inside scoop or inside story, because sometimes that happens where somebody knows something and they can only say so much. I'm saying everything I have to say here about it. But it's that weird thing where the sport should be like celebrating a phenomenal performance, like what you saw there, those times in Chicago. I mean, there's a glamour to it. It should be like, wow, wasn't this amazing? And yet there's kind of an arms crossed grieving to this performance. And it's very unsatisfactory, because she's gone through the test. She's kind of, that's all been fine. So it's not going to go anywhere. That record just sits, and some people will be, I don't know. And on we go.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned, was it 4:22? I think was the gap between her previous time and that time there. I think, just doing very quick maths, I think that's nearly 10 seconds a mile. You know, if you're looking at that, that's 10 seconds a mile, which at elite level is an astonishing difference across 26 miles. It's an astonishing difference. So I think you're always going to get that reaction in terms of, don't come and from the Kenyan Parliament, don't come for our heroes, which, we've had certain instances like that as well here as well.
We'd be exactly the same. Like, nationality kicks in. There's no question.
Absolutely. But I think it's essential that people ask those questions. Always, we saw it during the Olympics. We saw, people being asked. And athletes, obviously, it's the greatest achievement of their life, and they don't like being asked those questions. But the questions have to be asked, and the athletes have to be trusted to answer them. That they might give an answer that people don't like, but at least they are answering the question in the way that they see fit. But the important thing is they're being asked that question.
People must talk, but people must talk, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, if nothing else, there's as Aidan's alluding to there, there's a healthy scepticism, I think, in athletics, which was potentially absent in previous decades. And equally, cycling has gone through a similar thing, where maybe there's an overabundance of caution with certain things, but the saying, which is certainly true in boxing circles, where the testing is not so thorough, if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. If you see someone's performances improve markedly and they're boxing with power that they never previously displayed, it speaks for itself. But I think, as you alluded to, it is important in these cases that there possibly are going to be innocent people that these things are being peddled against, and it is important to highlight when they have pedigree preceding them, and she does seem to be, at least in this case, like have some pedigree before. The problem is the improvement just seems something that doesn't seem tangible.
And then, fair or otherwise, the Kenyan factor comes into it.
Yeah.
And again, that's unfair in some instances, I'm sure. So it's tricky. Questions are asked, they're batted away. There's a kerfuffle in the Kenyan parliament, and on we go. There's no real resolution to this story, but it's worth just highlighting it's gone on because, it's kind of historic performance, achievement, and that's where we are until Chicago next year.
I think a couple of the last Dublin Marathon winners as well have been banned in the last few years, following on from that. So, I can't remember the nationalities off the top of my head, but every single winner of every single race in athletics is now been looked at with that healthy skepticism, I think is fair to say, because it's the
great problem. I always talk about it as the Gay Byrne question to Paul Kimmage in the Late Late Show all those years ago after Rough Ride. So you're telling me if a bunch of people, quite a lot of people in the peloton are doping, then the lads up the front, ...
Yeah.
And that hangs over every race winner now in athletics, which again is so unsatisfactory. You're kind of sitting there going,
And the shoe technology as well does muddy the waters too. That there is that element of it too. So, and
you have to mention that to be fair to the athletes, like the rate at which records are being broken now. I don't suspect that everything was clean in the last 20, 30, 40 years, quite obviously, and so suddenly, everyone's doping. I think the shoe technology is a part of the story for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. That's our new women's marathon record holder, Ruth Chepngetich from Kenya, 2 minutes, 9 seconds and 56 seconds.
2 hours.
2 hours. She definitely would have been
2 minutes
then.
would have definitely
I would have asked a question then.
Even Kenya would have been like, okay.
The Kian Corla in Kenya even would have had to say, fair question. Have you run a marathon?
I've run 3. Yes.
See, he's a fit man. We've a League of Ireland footballer here in the room. It's not me or you.
No.
Okay, no. Quasi. 3.
3, yeah. 2 were enjoyable. I did last year and it wasn't enjoyable at all. It was a blow up after about halfway through. So,
did you blow up?
Oh, yeah.
Did you finish?
I did. I don't remember great swathes of sort of from about mile 14 to about 19 or 20.
Sorry, what's a blow up?
A blow up is basically you're running along and you think to yourself, now I'm looking at sort of 4 hours, hoping for a 4 hour marathon. I did one maybe 10 years ago, it was 3:59. So I got me 4 hours, was hoping for that again last year. And then was up on that, coming out of the park, I was not feeling that great. And you come up the hill there at Ballyfermot and then got across to the south side and there's a long drag and you're like, I think I might need to walk here. And then, so what a blow up feels like is kind of where normally you're jogging, then the blow up starts with a jog and a walk, and then it's a jog, a walk and a stop.
Okay.
And then the ratio of that will change as you go on. So it was a long haul for the last, but finished it anyway. So
you just kept stopping?
Just kept stopping and taking sweets from strangers and taking anything I could get.
Did you find it humiliating? Were you scanning the crowd to see if anyone knew you so you could stop at a certain juncture?
No, I was just too miserable within myself for to be scanning the crowd.
So what happened? Had you not trained?
I trained a bit. I think I got quite cold at the start and just felt cramping up and cramps in places I didn't realise that I had in the legs. Again, a long way out, like 10, 12 miles from the finish, getting cramps, which wasn't good. There was something wasn't right. I don't know what it was, but as someone said to me before, like, you're not going to win the race, so it doesn't really matter where you finish. So once you just try and finish it, so it's my favourite day in Dublin. I think it's absolutely Dublin at its best. It's a brilliant day to go and see. I'm just talking about speed. Like you see the guys at the front in the Dublin Marathon, and their speeds are extraordinary. The guys doing 2:30 who aren't going to win it, but I mean, 2:30 is kind of, it's well under a 6 minute mile for 26 miles, which is that kind of speed is extraordinary.
It's one of it's one of the most underappreciated sporting feats, I suspect, whereby we turn on the TV and we see 5 or 6 runners leading the marathon, and it's distinctly dull to look at. And the trick of the mind, it doesn't look like they're going that fast. It's only when you realise they're running at about 16 on your local treadmill in your local gym that you realise, my God, to even do that for a minute is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, right, okay. It's never appealed to me to do a marathon, I have to say. You?
No, well, my partner has also run 3, but she took it up in COVID times when there was little else to be doing. That's where she got into running.
Nice.
But Aidan alluded to the enjoying a marathon, and I've always like befuddled me. Like, I just can't see how it could possibly be enjoyable. But she would always talk about the satisfaction, obviously, and that's undeniable. I imagine where like the sense of achievement must be just incomparable. Like, when you finish.
And in Dublin, like there's people on the road beside you almost the entire 26 miles. Phoenix Park is probably a bit where there wouldn't be as many.
God, you have to stop in front of all those people. Wow.
Oh yeah, but sure, it's just sympathy. People looking at you, it's at that stage. There's always someone worse off than yourself. That's the thing. You end up having therapy sessions with fellow runners as you're walking along. You'll never meet again.
Is there any argument, by the way? So you know the way exercise is good for you, professional sport may not be. Is there any school of thought that running a marathon for your average human being is actually not a good idea? That someone like you who sits at a desk for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, actually to put your body under that kind of stress is not a good thing to do. Your joints and all the rest, you should just be doing yoga twice a week and a weight session and a bit of a jog, but running 26 miles, no.
Depends what you train for. I think that's basically what it comes down to. It depends, no matter what you're doing. If you just go out and you try and do, like, I haven't run in a good while. If I went out and tried to do 15, 20k now, I'd be in bits.
Yeah.
But if you build up from whatever, that's like desk jobs or any kind of job, once you train in the right way, once you train, you can build up to anything from there.
Tough on the joints, though. People who like run day in, day out, surely when they get to a certain age, their joints are in bits. By the way, this is completely unqualified, top of head medical thoughts from me. But it's just I kind of would look at swimming. I can see that's going to be nice on the body.
Yeah, I think you have people who just have a natural type of running style. Like, I mean, I'm the best part of 100 kilos and 6'3". I'm not designed to run that amount, that. But you have people who just have a very, very efficient running style who can go out and do 10k on Monday, 10k on Tuesday. It doesn't take anything out of them.
Yeah, that's true.
Because of the way they run. And it's probably just natural. It's not trained in them,
Yeah. No, I'd be heavy enough on my feet long distance. I'd be fast, but like distance, Jesus, no.
It's a long. When you look at the Dublin Marathon map, or you look at any map of any city or town that and you kind of go, Jesus, I've got to go from there to there to there to there, and you're kind of not sure you'd fancy driving it around Dublin. never mind running it.
So we won't dwell too much on Thomas Tuchel. We talked about him yesterday, but we have since seen his press conference. Obviously, he was introduced by Mark Bullingham, the FA chief executive, who, by the way, I would have said made very conscious hand movements. It was like somebody who had obviously done some kind of workshopping on kind of confident hand movements, but it didn't work. They were just very clumsy and awkward. Yeah. It distracted me. I was looking at his hands more than listening to him. But I did note that he said he was delighted that Ant was also on board, which is presumably Mr. Barry. So Tuchel, generally, he was asked any number of questions. First one, why he decided to take the England job?
I just had the chance to read a quote from Pelé in the building in Wembley, who said that Wembley is the heart, the capital, and the cathedral of football. And once I made a time frame up in my mind from January to the World Cup, I felt already excited, and that it suited my passion and my strive to push this group of players and to be part of this federation with such a strong record in the last tournaments, to push it over the line and to try to put a second star on the shirt. Like we said before, this task and this role just brought the young me alive, and it brought back my teenage days, to get excited for such a big task, for the three Lions, for playing matches at Wembley, for working with this group of players. I was not sure before we had this first talk if this is a role for me like in international football, because the schedule is very different from club football. But then we found so many similarities and so many things that suited my approach and my hunger to achieve special things. I always wanted to come back to England. That was my big goal. I have the best memories of the country, of the league, and of the players. The attitude towards the game, the attitude from the supporters, who that shapes the players, and the character of the players was one of a kind.
So, I mean, it's self-evident there. The point has generally been made. He's an exceptional communicator on various fronts. Naturally enough, tenor of conversation, not all strictly football. So here's a sample of that. First question you'll hear is from Dan Rowan of the BBC.
What would your message be, though, to those fans who would have preferred the England team to be managed by an English coach? And do you understand their position?
I'm sorry, I just have a German passport, but I can just tell them, and maybe all of these supporters also felt my passion for the English Premier League, my passion for the country, how I love to live here and how I love to work here. So my memories are on the highest level of that played a huge role. And hopefully I can convince them and show them and prove them that I'm proud to be the English manager. I will do everything to show respect to this role and to this country, no matter what nationality my passport says.
Big question for Lee Castle you had to answer. Will you sing the national anthem? Does an England manager need to?
Yeah, I understood from Mark that it's a personal decision. First of all, if you sing it, and there were managers who sang it and others who didn't. Your anthem is very moving. The English anthem is very moving. I experienced it several times here at Wembley, and even out with the players in a FA Cup final. So it was very touching. No matter what decision I will take, we have a bit time until March. I will always show my respect to my new role, to the country, and of course to a very moving anthem. But as this is a new subject, I will take a little bit time for this decision.
So that's a sample of Tuchel. We watched the press conference earlier. He came across incredibly well, authoritative, thoughtful, handled nonsensical questions with great aplomb as well. And further, I think, ensconced the view that this is a really good appointment.
Yeah, I mean, like he was trying to tick all the boxes there. He mentioned Wembley, he mentioned the anthem, he mentioned the 3 lions. So he was trying to kind of, I don't know, assuage some of those kind of type of questions that you alluded to. That, you know, these the German problem. Yeah.
I wouldn't have ever described it as a moving anthem.
No, very much. In the Six Nations, in comparative anthems, it's probably certainly in the bottom half where you might put it after that.
It's
I don't
joint
know.
last with ours. Let's be honest.
I think it stirs up some emotion.
Yes.
It's moving something.
But like, there's nothing in the kind of tone of it or the tune of it that kind of just, oh God, I can feel the hairs on my neck. It doesn't have that quality.
I wouldn't have thought
It's a bit
so.
of a dirge. You think it's a good move for England?
Yes. I don't think any English manager's ever come in and had the pressure or the expectation of, if you don't win a World Cup or a major tournament, that it's a failure.
Yeah.
I think there's generally been, when you go back, you know, maybe, I don't know, back in 1970 or 1968, after they won the World Cup, whether that was the same thing. But what Southgate has left is that if you don't win a final, because that's the level that he got to, that's the level of the players, that's the level of expectation now. So Tuchel is coming in as a winner, as someone who's won Champions League and won around them and won fairly quickly, made quick impacts. He would seem to be the best person for the job if you were taking nationality away. The best person available for the job is probably him. Any English managers there, I would understand the frustration in terms of that it, from an English point of view, that it should be, you know, our best against their best kind of thing. I think, you know, from the Irish side, I think that's partly why Stephen Kenny had such a groundswell of popularity, because he was one of our own. You know, he'd come through the ranks and all that. And I think that if you're an English coach, that's probably what you would like to see.
Yeah.
But the bottom line will come when, you know, if they're in the same final against Spain or whoever it might be, would you rather have Thomas Tuchel or Eddie Howe or Graham Potter or whoever? You'd rather have Thomas Tuchel, I think.
I think that's it. I think, and he's literally been brought in for that game, that semi-final or that final, because they're likely going to reach that stage anyway? And the answer is obvious. It's Tuchel. Who can come up with a game plan? It's Tuchel. Even interestingly, I thought it was striking. He said it. Mark Bullingham, as he was moving his hands in very commanding fashion, was saying this is about winning the World Cup. It's 18 months. That's what this is. Just to win.
That was particularly striking. I thought that he set his own terms of engagement here.
Just to
there's
win the
no
World Cup.
long term.
No.
I'm not blooding anyone.
No.
It's a win now. It's a hired gun from the English point of view.
We have Tuch, we have Ant, and we're going to win it. That was the gist.
That should have been the press release.
But yeah, the stated aim, he's here to win the World Cup.
Yeah, I just wonder because, like I mentioned yesterday, but I had the same thing in the Euros with Julian Nagelsmann. I was like, they have the best coach. They're at home. They have the really good players. But at the end of the day, it was De La Fuente, who has no such pedigree at the very, very top level. He was like an FA appointment in Spain. So for all the talk that England were going to continue down that route, and it wasn't Lee Carsley as it turned out, but that was the path that they'd landed upon with Gareth Southgate. They've kind of gone totally away from that now. And I think that is a fair point from, I've seen the likes of Gary Neville making that point that, the FA have been banging the drum about how amazing their regeneration has been in the last 15 years. And now they decided, actually, we haven't produced any good coaches enough for this.
There is that natural thing in football, right across football, where appointments are reactionary and you go for something a bit different to the previous incumbent. It does tend to happen. We saw it in England for the guts of 20 years. So I think that has kind of fed into things. We'll move off it. There's plenty of time to talk more Tuchel. He's not even taking the job until 2025. Lee Carsley sitting down going, oh my God, this again.
Might go back for him. Or it might go back for him next year. You never know.
Well, yeah. The rehabilitation of Paul Pogba is very much underway. So Pogba, as you remember, was banned for 4 years for taking a supplement in the USA. A doctor gave it to him in Florida. And it was obviously on very much the banned list, DHEA. And he went to CAS and he asked them to reduce it to 12 months. And they seem to have accepted that. And he's kind of happy to accept that. So it's gone from 4 years to 12 months. He'll be back playing in March 2025. And he's been doing the rounds, interviews, I guess, in a bid to try and repair some of the reputational damage. And amongst others, he spoke to Kavi Solakal of Sky Sports. I don't know, like when you consider Pogba is 31 years of age and is thinking about this interview, and this is a very serious thing, he can anticipate Kavi saying to him, like, what happened? So here's his answer.
And why did you take the supplement? Was it because you were injured or you were trying to regain your fitness or you trusted somebody you shouldn't have trusted?
I would tell you the whole story, but I think the easier way is I will get you the document and you can see it from yourself. You explain everything. That's the only thing that I would say. You get the document with all the response that of your question.
I think that's the easier way for you. I don't think it's the easier way for everybody else. No. And that happened a few times. There was quite a lot of, oh no, computer says no, you're just going to have to check the document. I can't possibly answer those questions. So it's kind of frustrating again. This guy isn't 21 and he's ill-equipped to handle an interview like this, and his advisors have said, listen, under no circumstances do you get into anything. Just say, go and read the document. Like, you've set these interviews up, you're in your 30s, you've nothing much to hide. Just talk it through, I think, a little bit. Again, Kavi pushed him a little bit, and he was like, was it to do with an injury? Or like, why did you take this? And he said, no, it was nothing to do with an injury. Nothing specific. It was just a supplement in the US, like a health supplement that anyone would take, and the doctor gave it to me, and that was me done. So I don't know. I suspect that may be the truth of it, but it's not like he necessarily kind of put on this very convincing performance. Otherwise, it was yesterday's happened.
Mm. There was I read quotes on BBC interview, and obviously I didn't hear it or see it, so in terms of the context of it or how he delivered it, but the quote was like, I take some responsibility because I took the supplement. Yeah. And then the next line, I didn't triple check. Let's say it like that, even if it came from a professional. Now, to say I didn't triple check implies that he double checked, which, clearly didn't. And look, they usually find, in these cases, the fall guy. It's a doctor or a masseur or someone like that along the line to take some of the hit for it. I don't really think he cares about explaining. I think he just cares about getting back playing. And like we touched on it earlier on around athletics, there isn't that element of, healthy skepticism around football and, and doping and that kind of thing. That isn't there. There's tends to be just adulation. So as soon as Pogba gets back and is doing keepy uppies and posting on Instagram or whatever it is he's doing, the legions of fans will come in, and if someone does stick their head above the parapet to try and question him again, they'll have their head taken off, not by Pogba necessarily, but by the army of fans that'll do it for him.
It's done remarkably well, football, to have no association with doping, considering there have been so many doping instances in football. I mean, literally the Juventus doctor of the 90s went to jail for 22 months, Riccardo Agricola, in what's like a massive scandal. One of the great teams, like even a couple of months ago in the overlap, Gary Neville was chatting about it around the table, and he was like saying there was something odd there. There was something odd there.
Felt it coming off the pitch, yeah.
Like I just knew, they, like us versus them, we couldn't have been much fitter. There's something odd there. Pep Guardiola, maybe the most high-profile figure in football in some respects. He's a doper, Nandrolone. The Fuentes scandal in Spain, like the links to Real Madrid and Barcelona are on the record, and yet there's just this vast secrecy over all of those dealings, and on it goes. And yet, if you said to people, your average sports fan, your average informed sports fan, doping in sport, give me the sports that jump to mind, there's a good chance they wouldn't even say football, let alone in the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sports they'd mention. Why that is, I don't know. Two other quick things to mention. Back page of the paper today, interesting story. Shock at exit of rowing Ireland chief. This is Liam Gorman on the back page of the Irish Independent. So he writes, in a surprise move, Rowing Ireland has decided not to renew the contract of the high performance director, Antonio Mauro-Giovanni. So Antonio has overseen the last 2 Olympiads where Ireland have obviously done very, very well. There was an email to athletes yesterday informing them of the situation. Dominic Casey of Skibbereen is going to take over as interim. Mixed responses. Liam has spoken to people behind the scenes, which is always interesting. So there was a post-Olympic review carried out on behalf of Rowing Ireland, and it was not published. God, you love these reviews to be bloody published.
Like Pogba.
I know. It included criticism of both his style and his programme. One senior athlete said Mauro-Giovanni's programme was outdated, and while it produced short-term results, there was a high chance of burnout. Now, Liam, in his piece, managed to speak to another senior athlete, a successful one, who said, I don't really know the what or the why of it, but I'm very disappointed. I know he's a very divisive character, but I owe my career to him. So either way, he is gone. That's the back page of The Independent today. And then one last one, baseball. That's
America's pastime.
That's all I have to say. So you're a man. It's not like spending your life working in sport and covering all sports is enough for you, Aidan. You get up and watch the baseball highlights of the morning.
There's a bit of that. I think was the line about Wenger, the relaxation from watching football or from being involved in football was watching football. There is a little bit of that. Yeah, I think you've spoken before, Joe, about avoiding scores, and you can get up in the morning and watch 15 minutes of a baseball match in October time, playoff time.
Okay, we're at semi-final stage.
Yes, so Yankees are leading the Guardians 2-0, and the Dodgers won last night against the Mets. So the Dodgers have a guy called Shohei Ohtani, who's quite a big deal. He's got I think he signed the biggest contract in the history of sport last year.
Yeah.
$700 million.
Delayed contract, isn't
Delayed contract, yeah. One of the great retirement funds. So he'll have $68 million a year coming to him in 10 years' time. He's on a mere $2 million a year at the moment.
Yes, okay.
So he's done it that way. But I think he got a home run, batted in 3, I think, on the home run last night. So it's one of those things that YouTube highlights will condense it down to 15 minutes and you won't miss a lot. It's a game that takes about 2.5 hours. And at that hour of the night, I couldn't commit to watching a baseball match at that hour of the night, but 15 minutes in the morning, you can wean yourself on to sport in 15 minutes in the morning, no problem.
Are those highlights free on YouTube?
Yep. You just search, you just put in MLB into YouTube and it'll pop up in 15 minutes, and no spoiler either. It doesn't come up as the scoreline doesn't come up, or this kind of thing. So
sorry, I don't mean to sound like that. Like I can't even imagine the possibility of doing that. I get it, because like people, there are baseball fans like all over. Billy Joe Padden one day, but it's like, oh, geez, I can't. Loves his baseball. I think pays the subscription to get the really good stuff. So they're out there.
They're out there.
That was a few bits and bobs for today. Ronan, thanks very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Aidan O'Hara, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.